Slick Talkers, start using AI-powered phone agents in under 20 minutes through Thoughtly AI. From handling reservation confirmation calls to then property frequently asked question calls, Thoughtly agents are always on, even after hours. So say goodbye to the unanswered phone calls and the long call wait times. Try Thoughtly for free today with the link in our show notes. Thought.ly is the link, but I know you have your phone. So go ahead, grab that link, tell them that Will Slicker sent you from Slick Talk, and they're going to take great care of you. Thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, thank you to Thoughtly for sponsoring this episode. You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. All right, Slick Talkers, welcome back. And we have an amazing guest, as they're all amazing. But this one, we're going to dive in deep to fundraising, glamping, all sorts of different topics today. So, Nick, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you. And it's been a long time coming, my friend. How are we doing today?
I'm very well, thank you, Will. It's been it's an absolute pleasure to come on. I've been an admirer of Split Talk and the whole network for a while. So I'm delighted to come on. Thank you.
Well, thank you for taking the time and being patient with me on getting you on. But, I think this is a perfect timing. So to give some of the listeners a context behind the scenes, you guys are currently raising some capital. You're actually launching your own glamping type business called Posh Outdoors. But before we get into all that, let's talk about some background here. You're part of Glampitec North America, co-founder. You brought it from the UK to North America, which is pretty exciting. I would love to hear the journey and the story kind of leading up to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So I started in glamping in the UK back in, it was November 2020. So kind of UK had a pretty big COVID boom with glamping. I think the market was already heading that way anyway. I was studying law at the University of Manchester. I realized very quickly into first year that I didn't want to be a lawyer, so I started looking elsewhere. And I was doing a bit of marketing work for a local business, and I got talking to a guy called Callum McLeod, who had co-founded Glampitec UK. That was the only Glampitec branch at the time. And that business, he had set up his own small glamping site on the north coast of Scotland, and realised that there wasn't enough help for people in his position. So he founded Glampitec with the aim of guiding people through the process of starting a glamping business in the UK, with a particular focus on getting the permits for the glamping sites in the UK. That business had grown pretty quickly. He was looking to kind of get out of the day-to-day a little bit and hire someone who could do the marketing side of things, who could write the guides and things like that. And I got speaking to him, and he kind of offered me the job on the spot, just as a work when you want, do as and when required. Whilst I was at uni, so I started there, and as I say, November 2020. Through the course of that, I started off doing some marketing, and then ended up kind of doing bits of work in different departments. So we did feasibility studies, did some sales as well, which was useful. And just got a real good understanding of the A to Z of what it takes to start a glamping business in the UK. We went to the UK glamping show back in that would have been October 2021. That was my first time doing sales for Glampitec UK. We had a really good show. It went really well. On the last evening, we went out for a few beers, and as always, those kind of situations are where the fun discussions happen. And I convinced Callum to let me crack America for him, and I think I put it at the time. So I was graduating, I think 9 months later. So July 2022 was when we launched Glampitec North America. Similar aim, guide people through the process of starting a glamping business. Obviously, in that 9 months in between, we did a hell of a lot of research on the North American market. So we launched that, kind of primarily focusing more on zoning analysis. So if someone had a piece of property, We'd look at it, look at the zoning code, look into the permitting situation of their county, figure out, whether they'll be able to start a glamping business on the property or not. At which point they can go on to the next stages, which we'd kind of advise them on. At the same time, launch our podcast, the Start a Glamping Business podcast, which is where some people may know me from, although the audience isn't that big. And yeah, that business kind of grew steadily. The plan from that point was always to kind of get into resort development of our own. So pretty early on, I got speaking to a guy called Kevin O'Brien, who is now the CEO of Posh Outdoors. And, I don't know whether you want me to speak about that now in a little bit, but that's how that all kind of got started. We kind of established a bit of a presence, started putting some stuff out there, and then that kind of led to where we are today, which is launching Posh Outdoors.
So can I ask, for Glampitec specifically, are you guys a data company, a consultancy, a technology, a kind of mix of both? Can you give me just, I know you help with the permits and the zoning and helping do all those other pieces and features, but what is the overall, like, is it a product, tech product? Kind of give me a higher level overview there.
Yeah, I mean, I would usually describe us as a consultancy, although it's not kind of a, pay us by the hour kind of thing.
Yeah.
We just, we would offer services. So a zoning screening that I mentioned, where we check out the property and figure out whether it's viable for glamping, that would just be in the form of a report. So, they pay us $1,500, we do the report, send it back to them. So it's very much kind of a service-based model, based on, my personal work. And then, as I say, kind of we've put that a little bit on the back burner as we've worked towards getting into developing our own resorts. So now Glampitec North America is more of a kind of a media company. Not that the idea is to generate revenue. It's our presence is there. My presence is out there through the podcast and our blogs and things like that. And that's kind of helped us with the investment and everything like that.
All right, Slick Talkers, so sorry to interrupt, but obviously what to expect when you listen to an episode, and that's for us to give an amazing shout out to our amazing partners. And one of those amazing partners is Minute. We've been with Minute for a while, and we use them in all of our vacation homes and recreation vacation rentals. So every home gets a noise sensor, and the reason why we do this is because, one, it's 100% privacy safe. And with the whole Airbnb banning indoor cameras, which, again, if any of you used them, shame on you, don't have indoor cameras, get Minutes, replace that, have it be privacy safe, where it only measures decibel levels. And that's super important because you're not recording conversations and eavesdropping on your guests. You're just measuring noise. And that's going to be so helpful for you and your team, because then you're going to be able to decide when parties are happening based on decimal levels and alerts from Minute. On top of occupancy, you could tell how many cell phones are connected to the Wi-Fi. All these other things are happening inside the home that really prove a case for parties. And maybe even when your home's unoccupied, when things go wrong, someone breaks in, something happens, right? You'll be able to have the proof and the knowledge of understanding what's happening inside of your property without actually being creepy and weird by spying on your guests and your team. So get with Minutes, grab the link in the show notes, make sure you grab the special offer. And if you have more than 10 homes, guess what? Reach out to them. They're going to take great care of you. Let them know that Will from Slick Talk sent you, and they're going to have you all set up. So thank you, Minute, for sponsoring this episode and for this show. We love your partnership. And of course, like always, we're back to the episode. I love it. And so, for one of the questions I actually did kind of write down that I wanted to ask you in this episode today was, my kind of beginning of Slick Talk was, I was a hotel manager that wasn't getting the mentorship and education that I was wanting or promised from the ownership group that I was working for, right? So my thinking was, hey, let's get a mic in front of other people's face that are way better and they're the bigger experts at things like revenue management and operations and leadership and blah, blah, blah. And I can learn from them for free. That was kind of like an initial thesis, right? So with your podcast, to now opening up your soon to be own operations with Posh Outdoors, did you kind of have a similar thing? Like, hey, I'm not an operator, but I can get in front of the best and I can put a microphone in front of their face. I can learn for free. And then I could actually publish this learning and then actually execute on my own. Was that kind of your thesis as well?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, to a degree, yeah. I'd say that the main driver was probably the podcast as a marketing tool, really. And I love marketing. That kind of the thing that I focus on. And that, I suppose, selfish reasons was always, it can be a great marketing tool. I do have an understanding of the industry. But as you say, yes, it's a great opportunity to learn from other people. My research into the North American industry from the UK when we decided we would launch the North American branch was I watched the American Glamping Association. They had they did like a series of lectures at the US Glamping show, and I think learning from the experts is the best place to start and carry on. So yeah, it's been amazing. I think we've done kind of 85 to 90 episodes now, which is probably nowhere near how many you've done. But in terms of glamping is quite a small industry. It's definitely a very small subcategory of short-term rentals. So it's quite a small world. So to be able to speak to I've interviewed probably about 50 operators, spoken to another kind of 100, 150, and then interviewed 25, 30 kind of non-operators, but financial experts, permitting experts, etc. That's been hugely valuable for me. For the business as a kind of marketing tool, but for me personally, and going into developing resorts of our own, you kind of you can make notes, yes, but also you get the same lessons drilled into you all the time. For example, we a common problem with glamping is that if you're proposing building on raw lands 20-25 glamping units, the neighbors might not like it, let's be honest. And so having spoken to several people who have been in that position and also kind of planning experts, it's very clear that it can be very helpful to get the message out when you're in control of it, and host a community meeting, for example, explain to the neighbors what you're doing. You just control the narrative rather than letting the kind of rumor mill spin. And that's just one example of you speak to enough people who have been there and done that, and the lessons get drilled in eventually. So I feel like I'm in a much better position to operate resorts myself, obviously with the team, than I was before I started the podcast. Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have one piece, your golden nugget from one of your episodes or throughout your whole 85 episodes that you're just like, what, this is going to stick throughout my whole career? Like, it just has been so consistent and reoccurring. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, we're actually doing a kind of we've done more than 75 episodes, but we're actually doing a 75 episode special in a few weeks, which is basically just an excuse for me to go through all the learnings I've picked up from the podcast. So I kind of came up with like a list of 11, which I'm obviously not going to go through. And that's very much glamping specific. There is one that is common for 100% of guests really, and that is that it's going to be hard. Now that's not new information for anyone involved in entrepreneurship. Everyone knows that, obviously. But still, it can be pretty easy to fall into the trap of getting excited over a new business and thinking it's going to be an absolute breeze. But pretty much everyone, and particularly, there's a company called Under Canvas, for example. Their founder, Sarah Dusick, that she sold her stake for kind of $100 million in 2019. So that end of the scale. She failed on her first site. She had like a hurricane wind blow down her second or third site, and it's just problem after problem after problem. And I think that can be pretty helpful to know that when challenges come your way, it's nothing that people haven't done before, and B, just going into the process expecting those challenges to come can make them a little bit easier when you encounter them. So there are lots of lessons, and it's not revolutionary, but I think the main thing is expect things to be hard, expect things to go wrong, and deal with it accordingly.
Yeah. What would you say, like, how would you summarize your entrepreneurship journey since graduating from university? Do you have like a kind of a similar feel? Like, it's just been, how has it been? Was it as expected? Has it taken you for a bit of a roller coaster? I want to know the honest truth. I want to hear.
Absolutely. I've wanted to throw my laptop against the wall about 30,000 times. So it's again, what I've said, you listen to enough entrepreneurship podcasts, read enough articles. Every entrepreneur who's successful says it's hard, but arrogantly, naively, whatever it is, you kind of think, oh, I'll be fine. And so when we launched North America, the Glampitec North America, that was actually okay. That was fairly straightforward because we weren't doing it on a huge budget. We didn't need a huge budget. It was just get the website up, get the marketing ready, and it was just myself and the original founder of Glampitec UK, Callum, working on it. He kind of gave me a lot of leeway to do it. So that was fairly stress-free. The first couple of months without, when we were chasing our first client, that was difficult because if you're 2 months in, you think, okay, how long is this gonna happen? And then I think we sold 2 zoning screenings on the same day, and then it started to roll from there. So that was a little bit of stress, although we knew it would take a little while to get going, on that side of the water. I'd say it's definitely been a lot more stressful in the last year as we've looked to move into resort development. We've explored a few different models. Do we buy land and do ground up development, or do we do what we're doing now through Posh Outdoors, which is partner with landowners and do revenue shares? And there's been a lot of twists and turns in that, a lot of frustration, a lot of, there's working with people when you're kind of got different ideas is obviously can present challenges. So yeah, my stress levels in the last year have probably never been higher, but also I've never been closer to getting where I want to get to. So it's absolutely been a roller coaster, and I'm sure I'm probably not even halfway through it yet, which is kind of scary to think about. But we are getting there, and it is satisfying to look back and see how far you've come. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that if things go as planned with this Posh Outdoors capital raise, we'll be able to kind of get off the roller coaster for at least a few days, and look back and think, we plowed through the difficulties and we got there in the end.
Yeah, I love how like my friends that work in corporate, they're just like, I just got to get to my 2 weeks of PTO and my 6 weeks of leave, and then entrepreneurs are like, if I could just get 2 at most days, just give me 2 days where I can just feel like I'm breathing.
Yeah.
It's super funny to see the shift. So a couple episodes before this episode comes out, we had Robin Cragen on, who he's been on the show many times. He's in the very big luxury mansion home type operations in Steamboat, Aspen, and Vail in Colorado. And they're huge homes. They've been around for 25 plus years. And one of his lessons or kind of statements was, because he showcased how the business structure has changed. Now they're called moving mountains, but a year ago they were trying to do moving beaches and moving oceans, but now they've kind of changed it and restructured. And I asked him, what was why restructure after initially going the other way in the beginning? And he goes, even though we've been in business for 25 years and we've been doing the same thing, it's still like you still have to reiterate over time. And sometimes you just don't get it right the first time. I would love to know what's one thing so far from either Glampitec or to Posh Outdoors, as you guys are continuing the fundraise and soon to get to the development side. Like what's the reiteration period been like for you? Obviously we all have the idea of how we want things to start, but what's that phase been like for your journey?
Yeah, I can give you an example. So, Posh Outdoors, the discussion started, it would have been, only a few months after Glampitec North America launch. So let's say kind of winter of 2022. And, the first few months we were just, figuring out what kind of model do we want to do. And we settled on the revenue share model. And by the way, just a quick fill in of what Posh Outdoors is doing. We're partnering with landowners, sending them luxury glamping structures and splitting the revenue. And so we figured out that model over a few months. Then we started preparing our business plans, pitch decks, etc. And the idea was we'd go to institutions and try and raise 20 million to get us going. Now that was probably a little bit naive to start with. Pretty much every institution that we spoke to said, come back to us when you've got one site up and running. And so very quickly we got the message, we need to kind of step back and have a think. There are a few things that happened after that. I kind of explored, do we do ground up developments, whatever, but we came back around to doing the rev shared with Posh. And so we decided, how do we kind of get the initial capital to get one site going rather than going straight for the institution? So we settled on a crowdfunding model. There are still private placements available if anyone wants to put in $500,000 plus. We'd love to chat.
Hey, if I have listeners putting in $500,000 into funds, I need to talk to them too. So
I was going to say, it's slick talk not to treating you well that you can't throw $1 million in. So we settled on crowdfunding, and that kind of played into our hands because my business Glampitec North America has a pretty reasonably decent mailing list, certainly for glamping in the glamping industry, and again a reasonable podcast listenership for glamping. And so I've got a lot of contacts who know glamping, who want to get into it in one way or another, and but maybe don't have $5 million to throw at it. So that's helped us. We've had a few $50,000 checks. We've got a $25,000 one coming in hopefully today as we record. So it's those smaller checks, and they're building up. So we're kind of raising now to get like the 1.2 million range, and that's a little bit easier, we hope, and it is proving to be a little bit easier, although still immensely stressful, than going to an institution and asking for $20 million.
All right, Slick Talkers. Sorry to interrupt. Halfway through the episode, you're making it through. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Hostfully has been a partner and sponsor of this podcast since the very, very early days of 2020. That's going on almost over 4 years. We're so thankful for their partnership. We use them for our vacation homes. Obviously, it's so important to have a hub. Everything that you need to know about your property, from reservations and calendar management to then, of course, how do you manage your connections with your other suppliers like Minute or Wheelhouse or whatever technology you use behind the scenes. Hostfully has the hub for you in order to make sure that you're managing your properties with ease and, of course, within one platform. Not only do they have great connectivity partnerships with other vendors in the industry, they have great distribution partnerships. So channels like Airbnb, Booking.com, Verbo, you name it, they're connected. Homes and Villas by Marriott, pretty cool channel. You can't go wrong with their connection and distribution hub, but also, let's be honest, we're always on the go, and having the Hostfully mobile app to manage our vacation homes and any kind of emergency communications or extra pieces that we need to know is super crucial. So grab the link in the show notes, make sure that you connect with Hostfully today, and they'll take great care of you. Will from Slick Talk had sent you. Let them know you're going to get a special offer as well in the link in the show notes. Now, like always, we're back to the episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and thank you to Hostfully for sponsoring this episode and for the podcast in general. We love your partnership. Thank you guys so much. And now back to the episode. Yeah. Well, can I ask what is, we've had a lot of guests on the show, and I know Ben Wolf is on your guys' board, but we've had also glamping roundtables. How do you define glamping? And what's your definition? Especially, I would love to know your definition and then how the difference is between UK and North America and the glamping industry.
Yeah. So I've always defined glamping pretty broadly, and Ben, as you say, he's on our boards. I obviously know him well. He won't thank me for this, but I consider his site glamping. He uses the term landscape hotel, and I don't think he particularly likes the term glamping. I'm probably a little bit biased because I've been I started in what was very obviously the glamping industry in the UK. So my definition is pretty broad. It's any kind of I don't have a set definition, but if there are individual structures out in nature that aren't kind of connected like a kind of a dormitory or anything like that, to me that's glamping. So I would include an hour in that. I'd include Isaac French's Live Oak Lake, so I'd include kind of the landscape hotels as well as the traditional bell tents or yurts in the field kind of thing. So I have a pretty broad definition of it, and for me it's about a slightly elevated experience, and that can be anything from, as I say, a bell tent, which is slightly nicer than a pitch your own tent, all the way up to Van Wolf's Spyglass or whatever it may be. And then in terms of differences between the UK and the US, I think the UK industry grew a lot faster than the US and earlier. However, I think there's a little bit more, I don't know whether saturation's the word, but that there are some there are a couple of unit types that absolutely dominate the UK industry. Glamping pods are these kind of timber structures, and you've got shepherd huts as well, which are the very traditional, quaint kind of huts that shepherds used to use, and obviously all glammed up for glamping. Whereas in the US, there's more variety, I would say. Certainly, probably because there's more climate variation in the US compared to the UK. But I think the big difference is in the US, you've got the presence of venture capital, which is massively different to the UK. So in the US, you've got under canvas.
Why do you think that is? I'm curious. Why do you think there's lack of capital deployment?
Business culture in the two countries is just completely different. Obviously, it's nothing to do with glamping really. It's just there are a lot more PE firms. There's a lot more venture capital in the US than there is in the UK. Obviously, you've got the kind of regional aspects, San Francisco and things like that. There's a lot more of that in the US. So that
I might be biased, but do you think that's like a huge missed opportunity for venture capitalists and private equity groups to not look at the UK as a way to deploy some of that? Or do you think the UK is ready for it?
I think it's more, I find it really depressing. The UK economy is not in a good state at the minute. We're not particularly good landscape for foreign investment, and so I think it goes way above kind of the individual venture firms figuring out whether they want to invest in the UK or not. It's just we're not a good economy at the minute, which makes me very sad. and I hope it can change soon. But I think, I think it goes much further beyond just glamping, and the presence of venture capital in the US has led to the emergence of the likes of Getaway, Undercanvas,
Yeah.
AutoCab, those big names now. Whereas there are no big names in the UK really. There was a guy who I actually interviewed on the podcast who was on Dragon's Den, which is the UK's equivalent of Shark
Yeah.
Tank. And just that one TV appearance basically made him the biggest celebrity in the UK for glamping. Whereas
Nice.
it's just very,
Yeah.
very different landscape.
Yeah. Can I ask on the sense of OTAs and kind of distribution for glamping? We've had a lot of conversations in the short-term rental world slash the hotel world, but obviously, I think our listeners are familiar with Glamping Hub or other sites, particularly that aren't just Airbnb or anything else like that. Do do you think glamping needs to take a different approach on distribution? Like, what's your kind of like thinking around getting right guest, right time, right place, blah blah blah, all those things?
Yeah, I think that the advantage that glamping has over traditional Airbnbs is that it is just inherently a lot more Instagrammable than,
Yeah.
obviously you've got Ben Wolf, for example. If you don't include him, if you don't count him as glamping and you count him as a short-term rental, like that's very Instagrammable. He's kind of an exception. But if you talk, even just a very nice looking traditional home that you've turned into an Airbnb, that's a hell of a lot
Hmm.
harder to market and build a brand around than a glamping site where you can have any kind of units, you can have stunning views and everything like that. So I think there is a lot more focusing glamping on social media marketing and direct bookings. I think it just becomes a lot easier.
Hmm.
Whereas it's a lot harder to do that with traditional homes. Now, obviously, people are doing it. There's always a lot of discussion about property management and OTAs and everything like that, clearly. But I think it is a bit easier to do that in glamping with the direct bookings. And I think there's probably less of a discussion as a result. And I think, the more focus
Yeah.
is on, okay, how do I do the social media marketing rather than, which kind of avenue do I go down? Obviously, people use Airbnb, booking.com, VRBO, but it is a lot easier to get direct bookings and build a brand in glamping, I would say.
Yeah. Would you say Hip Camp? I've been doing a lot of digging into other distribution channels for unique type of inventory, landscape hotels, glamping, whatever you want to call them. Do you think like I don't know, what's your approach on? I know it's easier probably, and maybe easy is not the right word to say, but book direct is a thing, right? When you're more Instagrammable and hopefully social media platforms like Instagram become or develop features that make it easy to book in app and kind of track that in the not just impression but to track that type of conversion, right? And so do you look at like fill like a lot of short-term rental people talk about OTAs should hopefully fill in your gaps. Like if you could build enough of a reputation with your guests, like you should get a lot of direct bookings, use the OTAs to fill in the nights that you can't sell. All that type of stuff. Do you have the same approach? Do you think that it's the same approach, or do you think the conversations aren't even the same compared to the two sectors of the industry?
I think there are similarities, yeah. You know, the
Let loose, let it fly.
no, I don't have a rant lined up. I'm just trying to figure out what to say. Yeah, I think there are similarities. The one thing I would actually say is that I kind of forgot to add to the previous thing is I know certainly listening to a lot of short-term rental podcasts and things like that is a lot of the short-term rental operators are kind of more investors and want to sit back and
Yeah,
have people run their properties. Glamping, that there are obviously people who are in it just for the financial reasons, but there are a lot more people who are doing it to escape their jobs. Certainly the smaller boutique sites that maybe have 6 bell tents or yurts or whatever, and
yeah,
those people live on, a lot of them live on site. A lot of them are front and center of all the marketing. And again, it becomes slightly more intuitive to do that direct social media marketing than say if a guy just owns 10 houses and outsources it to a property management company. So I think that makes a big difference as well. And yeah, I mean, it's everyone knows that if you can get 100% direct bookings, you should go for it.
yeah,
It makes more financial sense, but it's never as easy as that. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty common to have a split and people trying to push for direct bookings, but ultimately relying on the
yeah.
OTAs to fill the gaps. And to be honest, there's nothing wrong with that, because it's pretty unrealistic to expect 100% direct bookings. Not even the the best ones are doing that, really.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. That's a good point. I'm curious in the sense of investment opportunity. Do you think glamping, because I know for me, we got into short-term rentals, Airbnb, not only just through hotel exposure and operations, but through the ability to co-host, right? Like where you just like, hey, I'm gonna take my parents' apartment and put it on Airbnb, and I'll do all the work, but I'll take a small fee, and they just they get to collect 10 or 90 to 80% of the revenue, right? Um, do you think glamping is the next wave of, I would say, lower barrier to entry for hospitality entrepreneurs that want to get into something different, whether they work a corporate job, but they don't want to invest in a home or real estate, but maybe thinking like, hey, glamping could be the way to go. It's maybe a little bit more cost effective. Do you think that's kind of the next step, or would you say that's a step above co-hosting? And obviously, like you have no money down when you co-host, but I would say getting people to trust you, there's a lot of work going involved. Like you have to figure out the platform, all
Yeah,
that stuff.
yeah, yes, I'd say yes and no. Yes, absolutely. I speak to a lot of people who are in anything. I can't tell you the amount of times I've heard someone say, I've been in the corporate world for 20 years. I'm sick of it. I want to get out. And
Yeah.
obviously, people see the financial potential of glamping. They wouldn't be having that conversation otherwise. But it also offers the lifestyle change as well. Now, I do tell them, be prepared for some stress. It's not as easy as you might think. But yeah, absolutely, people you do see it as a potential escape from the rat race, I suppose. However, it's not as easy as I'm not for 1 minute saying setting up an Airbnb is easy, but there are more barriers to entry to opening up a glamping site, just because if you're developing on raw land, you need to figure out septic, water, electricity, Wi-Fi, etc. And that's a lot more. That adds a lot more complexity than, say, partnering up on a home with all those all that infrastructure already in place, and just doing a bit of a redesign and putting it on Airbnb. Again, if you want to go for the direct bookings, it is easier to, glamping goes hand in hand with that a little bit more, because it's more Instagrammable. It's a little bit more unique than a traditional Airbnb, but also it takes more work to do that than just whacking something on Airbnb. So yes, it is kind of, I would say it's the next step above that. I'd say, there are fewer barriers to entry to Airbnbs, particularly around getting financing as well, because it's just one single asset rather than land and their structures and infrastructure. However, there are a lot of people who are seeing it as kind of a chance to get out of the corporate race, and obviously generate a good income as well. And
Yeah,
and it's not like building a hotel, which is another level above, or two or three.
seriously. Or my friends who buy hotels and then completely gut them and restart
Yeah,
everything. You're like, holy crap, it's a
so
lot.
but fancy that.
Um, one day we'll get there. I'm very curious. So tell me about Skybridge Glamping. So I know this is your first project. Can you share a little bit into what Skybridge entails with Posh?
Yeah, Skyridge. Yeah. So Posh Outdoors is as I say, we've got myself. Obviously I'm representing Glampitec. You've got a guy called Ed Haynes from EJH Distribution. They're the supplier of the glamping structures that we're using. And then you've got our CEO and CFO, Kevin and Lee. They're kind of serial entrepreneurs who have come from outside, and they've kind of brought us all together. So we're partnering with landowners. We're sending them structures from EJH, in most cases doing kind of marketing and the back end stuff as well, and splitting the revenue. So the first deal we've signed is with Skyridge Glamping. They are a pair of operators with previous experience. They exited their previous glamping venture a few years ago for 7 figures. They moved over to Alberta in the Rocky Mountains of Canada. They spent 3 years getting a lease on government land. They had to go through layer after layer of bureaucracy, and it was quite sensitive land as well, so it took them a while to get the permits. But 3 years later, they got the land and the permits. They've got a 30-year lease on it. It's an absolutely outrageous location. It really is. I took a video from a site visit. I've been putting it on LinkedIn, and it's just 360 mountain views. It's absolutely ridiculous. And so they came to us. We did a deal. We've got a 20-year contract with them. We'll be sending them some tubo units, which are these very unique cylindrical structures that you won't see anything like. They are just very unique, but also year-round luxury glamping structures. And that's our first deal. We've got a 30% revenue share split with them, just because it's the structures only. We're not doing any of the back end stuff. The idea is that obviously goes well, and we just scale it. So we've got obviously through my business, we've got a lot of landowner interest who would be very interested in getting units sent to them at no upfront cost. That's going to save them a lot of capital. So we've got options in Florida, Vermont, more in the Rocky Mountains. So it's very much all across the US and Canada. We're really excited because it obviously saves the operators who want to get into glamping a lot of upfront capital, and obviously we can send them the structures, do some of the back end stuff, and take a big chunk of revenue. So we're really excited. But Sky Ridge is our first, and we think it's going to be a knockout just because the views are outrageous, and it's in a very popular area that a lot of people from Edmonton and Calgary go to. They just escape to the mountains. That's their trip away at the weekend or during the week. So we're very excited about that one.
Yeah, I'm sorry for calling it Skybridge. I misread
Hey,
my notes.
you're not the first one, don't worry.
No, it's like all these. I'm like looking at like tiny notes from my computer screen. Like, what is that? Skybridge? Yeah. Well, sorry about that, but no, it's really exciting. I do love the approach. I'm very curious to see, obviously, throughout time and how it's all kind of developing and building out. And you obviously have the right people in your corner, from Ben Wolf and everyone else that you guys are working with. So I'm excited. What's the, like, for all the listeners who are curious, want to potentially invest, learn more, hear your podcasts, check out Glampitec, check out Posh Outdoors. Obviously the links are going to be in the show notes, but what place would you want to send people if they're curious to learn a little bit more? Do you have a direct contact info too?
Yeah, I mean, my email address, I've got a few. The best one for this is probably just nick@posh-outdoors.com. But the best place for people to go to if they want to learn more about what we're doing and the potential investment opportunities, we have a 3-minute intro video that's done by my co-founder Ed Haynes, who owns the structure company. That explains what we're doing in 3 minutes. I know people are very busy, so I would suggest watching that. And then we also have a deal page which kind of runs through the whole prospectus. That includes the video as well, and that runs through some of our future plans, the unit economics, and more of the financials. If anyone reads through that and they want to kind of move on to the next stage or learn a little bit more, then just shoot me an email. We can send you the kind of gated financial model, get on a call with the rest of the team, and go from there. In terms of investing, there's 2 options. One, if you're $500,000 plus, let's just talk directly and we could discuss a potential private placement. Anyone else?
Nick's also going to send your information to me, so just FYI.
Yeah. And then anyone else is we're using WeFunder, which is the crowdfunding platform. The link to that is in the deal page, although there can obviously be a separate link as well. And you can just directly invest through that. Obviously, if anyone has any questions on that in terms of what you actually get, then just shoot me an email. We can have a chat.
I love it. Well, thanks for taking the time today on the show to kind of share your story, what you guys are doing, how it's developing, some lessons learned along the way. Like I said, for all the listeners, the links will be in the show notes. So check out his podcast, check out Posh Outdoors, check out the WeFunder, check out everything. Give the love and support like you do to our show to him. Nick, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll let you know if anyone with $500,000 comes my way.
Yes, if so, I'm sure it's going to be a big list. So we'll get ready. We'll get geared up. No, but seriously, thank you so much, Nick. And for all the Slick Talkers, you know exactly what to do. Like and subscribe to all things, so that way you support our guests just the same thing as you do the show. It keeps everything running in perfect harmony. So thank you. And of course, like always, we'll see you guys again next week. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.